We have another person coming in. Kana is coming back in again for the second time. I guess we must have lost her. Okay.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to go ahead and lock the meeting just because it can be disruptive. And I'm giving you back. I can't figure out how to do it. There we go. All right, you're back.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again.
All right.
Okay. And by the way, I wanted to say hi to Kay Claridge. She's an accountability buddy from more than a year ago. So just wanted to say hi, give a shout out to her. All right. Can everyone see the slide all right? And again, my apologies, it's got an NMF on it, but I promise it's relevant. So there's a story about a young man named Timmy. This was back in the 90s, and Timmy had multiple personality disorder, and he had some of his alternate personalities had an allergy to orange juice, and they couldn't drink it. If Timmy drank orange juice, he was fine. If one of his alternate personalities was in control and he drank orange juice, he'd break out in these terrible boils, these vicious hives on his body. And if he switched back to Timmy being the dominant personality, the hives would instantly disappear. And if Timmy drank orange juice, he was fine. If while the orange juice was being digested, he switched to another personality, the hives would reappear. This was something that doctors found fascinating. Another story, a little bit more modern or more recent, is a young woman named Encina that lives in California. And she has, I believe, 12 personalities total. So again, suffers with DID. So she's got 11 alternates. She is gluten intolerant, which is why I have the picture of the bread up there. But some of her other personalities are not. So again, she cannot ingest gluten without having a reaction, but her other personalities can. And as I began my bright line eating journey, I started to study identity. Susan talked quite a bit about changing your identity. I don't know if you've heard that phrase from her, but I found it fascinating. And I began to study identity very, very deeply. And when I saw these cases of, there are other documented cases, and I won't jump in all of them, but there are documented cases of people with DID that where one personality is diabetic and another one is not. And you could draw blood and you'll get different markers minutes away. And I used to be type 2 diabetic, and you don't change that in a few minutes. You change that in a few months, right? Or a year. And there are other stories of people even between different personalities changing eye color or changing lingual abilities. There's even a story about somebody who was blind, and then after shifting personality, their sight returned. And while they were in that blind personality, doctors tested vision, and the receptors inside were showing as not receiving any information. It wasn't just that they thought they were blind. The receptors inside were actually not receiving information. What I'm trying to point out by this is that our minds are these things that we assume are part of our body are actually tied so closely to our minds and to what's inside, what we believe at our core. Now, most of us don't suffer with DID, and so most of us have just one personality. But I began to wonder as I studied this, is it possible that, that we could use that we could leverage the power of this identity to make our journey a little bit easier? So let me jump in and talk a little bit about, I've got another slide up. So there's no more NMF, and if anybody had their eyes closed, you can open your eyes now. There's no more NMF for the rest of this presentation. But let me talk about how we've assumed, maybe before we started to bright line eating or before we started any kinds of change in our lives, a lot of people kind of assume that this is how the world works, that we start off with who we are at our core. And then that gets passed through some sort of cosmic favor, arbitrary worthiness, sheer dumb luck. It's just that there's these things that we can't control, right? And that what ends up happening is we get these conditions, circumstances, environments. So you'll hear people talk about, their frustrating experiences. I just can't seem to do this. I just can't seem to do that. I'm unable to do this. And they're not being weak or lacking willpower. They genuinely believe that they can't do it. This is how people see it. When you have this paradigm, it's really hard to live or see anything else. Let me share what I've discovered, how things actually work. Our mind is the seat of our identity here. And we've got our conscious thoughts and words, and those feed into or they drive our emotions, which is much in our subconscious, is in our limbic brain. And our emotions drive our actions, they drive our behaviors. And as you and I all know, our behaviors produce our results. The results we have around us. Now, there are things we can't control. Sure, I can't control the weather, but I can control my response to the weather. I can control whether I enjoy it or whether I have a miserable day. I can control whether I grump about the rain and get wet and get irritated, or I can control whether I choose to dance in the rain. There's all sorts of responses we can have, right? We can choose what kind of weather we carry around inside us. But most of our life is driven by these emotions that drive our actions. And if you're like me, you might be uncomfortable with that thought. You might say, Rob, I don't know. I think it's our thoughts. We choose our actions. Our thoughts drive our actions, our behaviors. It's not our emotions. There is a multi-billion-dollar marketing industry that is going to bet every dollar of of what they've got that it is your emotions that drive your behaviors. Okay? Think about this. I don't know if any of you can identify with this, but this is an experience I had that years and years ago, before starting Bright Line Eating, I found myself driving down a highway, and I had a thought come to my head. I want to pull off at this certain exit. I want to pull into my certain favorite drive-through and order a big container of NMF, right? And then I said, no. And I exercised conscious thoughts, right? No, I'm not going to do that. I want to eat healthier. So I'm going to eat healthier. And as I drove down the highway, I continued to think and think and think about this NMF. And I continued to feel irritated with my day. It started out as a really small irritation, but it built up. I started to feel irritable. I deserved something better. I needed something better. I needed to calm down. I wasn't feeling right. I needed to chill out. I needed to wind down after a long day. And eventually, without even thinking about it, automatically, right? Susan talks about automaticity too. Automatically, I found myself flicking the turn signal, taking the exit, and pretty soon, almost without noticing it, I'm sitting in line at my favorite drive-through. And I thought, well, now that I'm here, I might as well order the NMF. I mean, it's I will feel silly pulling out of the line and driving away. So I did. How many have ever experienced something like that, right? Raise your hands if you've ever experienced. Yeah, all right. So a few of us have done this. Our emotions drive our behaviors, right? Our conscious thoughts are there too, but those emotions drive that behavior far more often. So what does that mean for those of us that want to change? Why is it so hard to change? And let me share, I'm going to go back to this concept of our thoughts driving our emotions, driving our actions. Here's what usually ends up happening. We've got conscious thoughts, and they drive our emotions, right? And the emotions drive the actions. We get a certain result. That result often is not what we want. I don't know about you, but I found myself with a really horrible result. I was close to 400 pounds, and I couldn't run. When I went to amusement parks with my kids, they couldn't get the safety bar down, so I had to get off the rides and watch my kids enjoy the rides by themselves. I found out that restaurants were not made for large people, and so I couldn't sit in those corner booths. In fact, most of the world was not designed with people my size at that time in mind. And so my results were just not fun. They were not enjoyable. It also didn't feel very good. I remember sitting at the bottom of a flight of stairs, a single flight of stairs in my home, and I had my hands on either banister on either side, and I'm looking up the flight of stairs, and I just hung my head and let out this big, deep sigh. all right, I've got to psych myself up to take that first step so I can drag my carcass up those stairs. It was hard, guys. It was arduous, miserable. Okay, those were my results. What are our results? What happens? Our results usually affect, you can see that big yellow arrow under there, our results affect our emotions. And there's this feedback loop where our emotions drive our thoughts, which drive our emotions. And so we get stuck in this feedback loop of we feel kind of cruddy, and so we think cruddy thoughts, and they make us feel kind of cruddy. We think cruddy thoughts. There's this big feedback loop. And guess what happens? Our actions drive more cruddy results, which just add right back into those emotions. And we get stuck in a rut. We actually become addicted to a certain personality, a certain type of behavior, a certain identity. Okay? And here is an answer to the question I just asked. Why is it so hard to change? Because we are waiting until we feel like it. When we're going to change anything, we're waiting until we feel like changing, right? Well, I'm gonna start running when I'm ready. I'm gonna start eating better when I'm ready. My absolute favorite, and I'm not making fun of anyone else, guys. I'm pointing the finger at myself when I say this, because I did this so many times when I'm starting a diet. I'd be like, well, Christmas is around the corner. I'm gonna wait till after Christmas and then start, right? I'm gonna wait till after the 4th of July, because our founding fathers wanted us to indulge on meat, right? Like tons and tons of meat. I mean, that's what America's about, right? I'm gonna wait till after Thanksgiving, because and I'm gonna wait till I feel like it, guys. Here is a nasty truth, but it's so true. While you are experiencing a negative result, you will never ever feel like it. I promise. You're never going to feel like it. So change has to happen without you actually feeling like it, and that's why change is hard. You and I, we know what we need to do, right? If we have a tough relationship, we know we need to be a better listener. If we are unhappy with our weight or our health, we know that we need to shop more in the produce section and less in the bakery section. That's easy. Nobody needs to tell you that. There's no secret handbook for that. But the trick is we don't feel like it, right? Bright line eating is very, very similar. As I reached out and connected with these wonderful, wonderful groups of people supporting each other on Facebook, one of the things I figured out is there seemed to be kind of two buckets of people. One bucket was people that had gotten on. Some were crystal vasers, but some were people that made a mistake here or there, but they jumped back on, and they did bright line eating, and they had these amazing results, and I envied them. I just totally loved watching the results they had. People, I don't know if you've bumped into any of these people, but Shauna Murph, Jenny Campbell, and some others, and Susan Pierce Thompson being a leading example. Cindy, others that just set these examples. People out out leading in the front. They had these great results, and they kept it off. And then there was another bucket of people, just as sincere, just as worthy, just as beautiful, just as committed, just having just as much desire, having just as much willpower, that would fall off and get back on, and fall off and get back on. This was even before the Reboot Resume program was created. There were people that were rebooting, resuming constantly. And my heart just went out to them. I thought, what is going on? These are not wimpy people. They don't just lack motivation or willpower. What's going on? And I realized that there was some identity in there that was waiting until they felt like it. And so, again, just pointing out, our emotions are what cause us to feel like it. And as long as our thoughts are down, all right, as long as our circumstances and environment, our results are down, our emotions are going to be down, right? Unless we take conscious and deliberate control of that. So the question down here is how can I ever change? If that's the case, I'm stuck, right? Big rut. I'm never going to be able to change. Not true. Here is something else I discovered. And again, there are some great books behind this. I'd be more than happy to recommend books at the end of this. But we can control what we experience. Your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience with a lot of detail and a real experience. It cannot tell the difference. Okay, you can imagine it with a lot of detail and with a lot of emotion, and guess what? Your brain is going to process that exactly as if you were already living it. So we take conscious control then of our thoughts and words and use that deliberate, constant repetition of conscious thoughts and words to mold our emotions, to mold a new set of emotions, to create a new experience, if you will. And that begins to change our identity. Those things happen in our mind. Those begin to drive a brand new set of actions, which drive a new result. And that new result, remember that yellow arrow feeding back into the emotions, that new result does indeed feed back into the emotions and gives us a much higher vibration of emotion, a much more positive emotion. So I keep using the word identity, and I feel like it's a little bit unclear. So let me just share. Identity. Our identity consists of our self-image, the mirror inside, the way that we see ourselves, our paradigms, the ways that those unquestioned thoughts, and that includes our core unquestioned beliefs about us, about others, and about the world around us. Guys, when I say unquestioned beliefs, I mean you don't even think, you and I don't even question them. They're so much a part of who we are. We assume that is the way the world works, and that is. I just want to point out, I just want to put this idea seed in your mind that some of the things that you have believed since you were a little child may not be true. They may actually just be a belief that you have never stepped outside of. Most of you have probably heard the story of the elephant in Africa. When Africans get a new baby elephant, they tie it to a pole. They stick a wooden stake in the ground, and they tie it with a rope. They tie a rope around one of the elephant's legs to that stake. And the baby elephant tries to pull, but that stake is strong and it keeps the baby elephant from moving. And it grows up learning that it can't move. And that becomes a core, unquestioned belief in that elephant's mind. And when that elephant becomes a male bull elephant that can pull thousands of pounds, that can wreak havoc if it wanted to, all they have to do is tie a rope or maybe a very weak chain around its leg to, again, a stake in the ground. The stake doesn't get any stronger. The rope doesn't get any stronger. Guys, that bull elephant could walk away in a heartbeat, but it sees the rope and assumes, because it has never bothered to question it, that it can't move, and so it stays tethered to that spot. Now that's great if you're an elephant herder, but if you're you and me and we're trying to improve our lives, what we want to do is get out of that situation where we are tethered in one spot because we don't question those beliefs. So truth number 3, you and I can change our identity. Just like people with DID, where they would change that identity and their results would change dramatically. Now, again, their results changed in minutes because they changed their identity in minutes. I'm not suggesting here that by thinking real hard, you can change your cholesterol level. That's not where I'm going. What I am suggesting is that you and I can change our one identity. And that when we do, and it takes time, but that when we do, that change is massive. Your results and my results can be as massively different as those DID patients. Your physiology and body chemistry can change with who you are. So let me share some ways to do that. Constant spaced repetition. There's 2 ways. The psychologist said there's 2 ways to change your paradigm, to massively change your point of view or your assumed thoughts. One is a traumatic, an emotionally impactful event. And the other is constant spaced repetition. Emotionally impactful events would be something like, finding out you have heart disease, or having a stroke or a heart attack, or having a loved one die, or something like that. Okay, those are these emotionally impactful events. Number 1, they're usually really, really negative, and number 2, they're really, really hard to orchestrate. So we really want to go with constant spaced repetition because that is something that's easy for us to plan and orchestrate and fit into our day. That just means that you are feeding yourself a healthy diet of really good thoughts and really good emotions at spaced periods throughout each day. The second is that we want to create the desired experience in our minds. That what happens as a result of that is that our behaviors become a little bit easier, and that feeds back into our emotion. We go, hey, this isn't quite as hard as it was last week. And we get emotionally excited about it, and that emotional excitement feeds into the behaviors again, and it becomes a never-ending cycle, but it's a positive cycle instead of a downward cycle, okay? And the fourth piece of that is that we concentrate on who rather than what. We concentrate on who we are becoming rather than what we're doing. And that is super key. And that's something I found with Bright Line Eating. Susan gives us the what. She gives us the 4 bright lines. And I am grateful to my dying day for Susan doing this. Because of Bright Line Eating, I will likely live 3 decades longer statistically than I would have otherwise. And those 3 decades will be a whole lot cooler than they would have been because of Bright Line Eating. Susan gives us that what. What I want to suggest is that in our heads, we decide, we focus, yes, the bright lines, we want to keep the bright lines. We want to focus on the what, but it's not all about the what. It's not about the number on the scale, right? Susan says that. It's about who we become in the process, all right? And I'll share a little bit of that. Who I became in the process. I became a better father. I became a better friend. I became someone that exposes my family to much better weather, emotional weather every day. I became someone who's happier. I became someone who's healthier. I became someone who can run farther. I can actually run with my kids and have races. I can ride the theme park rides now. They still scare the tar out of me, but I can get on and the safety bar can come down. And there's even a little bit of room between me and the safety bar. And that's kind of cool. I can fit in restaurants. I can fit in other places. I can get in my car now and I can turn the steering wheel easily because my belly is not right up against it. I can have these neat experiences and enjoy it. And I don't feel self-conscious around people anymore. I love people, but I no longer feel self-conscious. And that's a whole different ballgame. I've become someone that I don't want the food anymore. I don't want the NMF because I love who I am, no longer driven by that fear. I'm driven by love. I love who I've become, and I love who I am when I'm with my kids. I love the kind of father I am. I love the kind of person that I am. And that is, to me, that's the change. The weight, that's a byproduct. The change in body is a byproduct. The miracle is what happens between our ears when we change. Let me share some great first steps. Cindy very kindly mentioned that as part of this, I put together a program. I call it the 7 Shifts program. And those 7 shifts were, I had a friend come up to me. I won't share her name because she's in some of the Bright Line Eating groups, but we'll call her Mary. Mary came up to me and said, Rob, I see you losing this weight. At the time, I'd lost about 125 pounds. She said, this is great. How are you doing this? And I shared Bright Line Eating with her. And so she went and signed up. She bought the book and she got started and she lost 20 pounds really, really quickly, which was great. Then she fell off and she struggled to get back on. And I recognized in her that same trait that I recognized in that bucket of people that was rebooting, resuming. And she came back to me and she said, Rob, I'm having so much trouble. How do I do this? How did you get back on and stay on? And I said, well, it's identity change. I reverted back to the things I was studying and the things Susan was teaching. And I said, it's identity change. She said, how do you change your identity? And to this day, I think I owe her, thousands of dollars for asking that question. And I told her at the time, the most brilliant thing I've probably ever said. I said, I have no flipping idea. I have no idea how I changed my identity. Let me go think about it. I had to go back and reverse engineer it. And I did a lot of praying and thinking and writing and meditating and writing and meditating and writing. And I came back to her and I said, Mary, here are 7 shifts, 7 changes that I made in my life. And if you make all of these 7 changes, it opens you up for that identity change. You will see that change happening. And when you do that, when you make those changes, when you change your identity, the new identity pulls you toward it. Guys, you remember Susan talks about automaticity, right? When we struggle and then fail, it's because we are spending all of our effort, and there is effort at the beginning. There's a willpower, right? Susan talks about we each have a little bit of willpower each day. That willpower energy, we spend it trying to change our behaviors. But eventually we hit a point where that willpower starts to run out. The old identity pulls us back into security and we fall. But if we spend our energy, that emotional energy, instead in changing who we are becoming, in focusing on who we are becoming, we still do it by following behaviors. We still need to keep the bright lines, but we don't follow them because we want to follow them. We follow them because we want to be a healthy person. We are becoming someone who's healthy, and someone who's healthy follows those bright lines. And at the end of the day, there's enough emotional energy left over to keep pushing, to keep pushing. And as we do that, every day that you follow the bright lines, you cast a vote for the new identity. All right, think about the identities as just candidates in this vastly critical election. And every day that you keep the bright lines, you are casting a vote for the new identity. You don't have to be 100%. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a crystal vaser. You just have to vote for the new identity more often than you vote for the old one. Way more often. And the more that you do it, the more strength that you get. Remember, it feeds back to that emotional energy, right? The new results feed back into the emotional energy. I didn't focus on becoming, I started out north of 375 pounds. I got down to a little below 175. I'm now about 185, and I'm very happy with where I'm at, and I've been maintaining for about 7 months. But it was difficult to envision a 175-pound man. It was really hard to see that. So instead, I created an identity of I'm a healthy man. And guess what, guys? I don't have to wait 16 months to be a healthy man. I can do it today. You can do it today. You keep the lines bright one day, and you are healthy today. You did it. You can pat yourself on the back, and that gives you a little bit of emotional energy and just enough energy to cast a vote again for tomorrow. And it becomes that one day. That's how we do the one day at a time. We say one day at a time. We say it all the time. That's how you do the one day at a time. You got what you spend one day, spend your emotional energy that day to get enough emotional energy for the next day. And that's it. And you just keep doing that. And when you pile up enough of those in a row, your identity begins to change. The first two, I don't have time to run through all the 7 shifts, and I apologize. I want to respect your time. The first 2 are thoughts and words. And so I'll just share some first steps here. Notice your thoughts and language. The most powerful thing you can do is to notice. In fact, we'll take 1 minute here and just do a quick exercise. Go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to notice your right knee. Just notice it. Can you notice that? Nod your head if you can notice it. Notice your left ear. Okay? Notice your left elbow. Notice the thumb on your right hand. Notice the very tip of your nose. Okay? Go ahead and open your eyes. As I walked you through this exercise, I told you what to do, and you purposely controlled what you noticed. You took total control, and you noticed what you took control of what you noticed and made yourself notice certain things. Using that same control that you just demonstrated to yourself that you have, I would recommend now that you notice what you are noticing each day. What are you paying attention to? Your mind is this massive transmitter of energy. Okay, this is physics. I'm not making up. It's not just Eastern medicine, but this is physics. Your mind is a transfer station of energy, and whatever you are noticing, that's what you're giving energy to. And if you are noticing your feelings of unworthiness, if you're noticing the number on the scale, if you're noticing your unhappiness, if you're noticing your partner or spouse not encouraging you, if you're noticing that that beautifully wrapped NMF on the counter, that's where your energy goes. That is what's going to draw you. That is the identity you're casting a vote for. On the other hand, if you notice that you got a little bit healthier today, if you notice that you feel a little bit better when you keep your lines bright, if you notice that your mind is a tiny bit clearer, if you notice that you are able to show a tiny bit more love to your spouse or partner or children or yourself, if you notice that you feel a tiny bit better on days when you keep your bright lines, focus your energy there. Notice what you're noticing. Notice your thoughts and language. Ask this question and write it down. What would I love life to be like? What would I love? Write down everything. It doesn't have to do with food, guys. It doesn't have to do with bright line eating. Okay? I wrote down things that had to do with my relationships. I wrote down things that had to do with going to the amusement parks and running around in the yard with my kids. Write down what would I like my life to be like, and spend a little time each day. Practice daily visualization. Take a few minutes each day, maybe in the morning or before you go to bed. Close your eyes and envision that. Feel it. Walk through it. Okay? If you want to feel healthier, what would that feel like? What kind of clothes would you wear if you were healthier? What colors of clothes? Would you wear colors that were more vibrant? Where would you shop? What parties would you go to that you're a little embarrassed to go to now? What people would you feel comfortable hanging out with? What things would you do? What activities would you engage in? What games would you play? What person would you be willing to walk up to and talk to that you might not feel like talking to now? What groups would you share ideas with? Okay, what would you do differently in your job if you were the healthy person that you envision? Walk through it and feel it. Walk through every step of it. That feeling, that emotion, combined with the mental picture for just a few minutes a day, changes. That gives you an actual experience in your head that begins slowly over time, constant spaced repetition. Over time, it builds up and you actually cast tons and tons of votes for a new identity. And then I would recommend also practicing daily meditation. What Cindy walked us through at the very beginning of this meeting, a little bit of daily meditation. I started out being really horrible at meditation. I could not do more than 2 minutes without my mind just going all bonkers everywhere. And I added a minute each day. And after 20 days, guess what? I could meditate for 20 minutes. And that was really cool and really different for me. Guys, deep at our core, we all have a fear. And that fear is that when you, excuse me, I'm going to be very unmanly for a second. Oh man, you think I just watched Ella Enchanted or something? We all have a fear at our core that when you strip away our coping mechanisms, when you strip away our dissociation, when you strip away our emotional armor, that we are not enough. That we are not enough. I had that we are unworthy of love, that we're unworthy of our own love, that we're unworthy of self-care. And it's never something we articulate. It's not in our conscious thoughts, it's in our subconscious. And we hold it there and it lives there. As you meditate and you say the things that Cindy was saying at the beginning, right? Talking about honoring and caring for myself and safety. When we become a safe place for ourselves, we are no longer driven by that fear. And that ability to change our identity is massive, massive. I want that for you because it changed my life and it made me a better father and it made me a healthier person. And I'm just going to share a final slide here. I want to show you my first client. I work with a lot of clients and help them walk them through the 7 shifts. This is my first client. This is me. On the left-hand side, that is me in August of 2018, just a couple months after starting Bright Line Eating. And the one on the right is a year later in August of 2019. And I hit my goal weight in October. And like I said, gained a few pounds back on purpose. But that difference, and your difference may be different. Maybe you don't need to lose 200 pounds. By the looks of the camera, most of you don't. And none of you do, in fact. I think I'm the only one on camera that needed to. My point is, maybe yours is different. Maybe yours is a better relationship with your spouse. Maybe it's a better marriage. Maybe it's a better relationship with your children. Maybe it's a better relationship with another beloved person. Maybe it's a better job or career. Maybe whatever it is, maybe it's better finances. Those things they all outflow from that emotional energy. And when you take care of your health, your feedback gets so much better in so many different areas. I just want to throw that out. And that said, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing. Thank you. I just wanted to share that with you, share those thoughts about identity, and happy to field any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Rob. If you have a question for Rob, please just raise your hand or unmute yourself if I don't see you, and be happy. You're welcome to go ahead and ask that now. And thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Hi, Rob. This is Desha.
Hi, Desha.
First of all, thank you for sharing your story and your passion. And I believe too, like, our minds are so powerful. So, of course, my question is, can you share, or do you have a program to share all the 7 steps? Because we didn't get to all of them obviously today.
You bet. And I wanted to be really, yes, I'll be happy to point you towards some information. Um, I really appreciate and honor the opportunity to talk with you today. And so because I work with clients, I did not want to come in and have anyone feel like I was doing a sales pitch or something like that. So I didn't really touch a whole lot on programs. But I do have a website if you're interested, powerfulidentity.com. And it's being worked, so it's maybe a little bit slow today. There's some work being done on it by a friend. But that talks a little bit about programs. And I'd be more than happy to quickly rattle off the 7 shifts for you. And if anyone would like more information, contact Cindy. She can put you in touch with me, and I'm happy to send some free information about the 7 shifts. The 7 shifts are in this order: powerful thoughts, powerful language, controlling those words that we say, the words that we speak to ourselves. The third one is powerful knowledge, being willing to study and learn more about it. Anyone that's picked up Susan's book and read Bright Line Eating, the book, or gone to a boot camp, you're already exercising powerful knowledge. The fourth one is powerful tribe. That is creating or joining a culture of support. And again, by being here, you're already doing that, which is super powerful. I'll share a quick story on that in a second. The fifth one is the most impactful to me, powerful motivation. And that was a shift from being driven by fear to being driven by love. When you can change the driving emotion in your life, that overarching emotion, it changes everything. It makes all changes so much easier. The sixth one is what I call powerful sacrifice, and it's twin of powerful gratitude, and that is simply a shift away from focusing on what we're giving up to focusing on what we're getting in return. And the seventh is powerful focus, which is a change from focusing on what we are doing to who we are becoming in the process. In other words, instead of saying, I'm following these 4 bright lines, I say, I'm becoming a healthy person. That's who I'm becoming. And there are a lot of different components to that. It's not just something we say, but there's a lot of components to it. Quick story for Powerful Tribe that I thought you might appreciate, because we're a tribe here and we're working together. When I started Bright Line Eating, I recognized that I could join a tribe. I could join a Facebook group and receive a lot of support, and Facebook groups are amazing. But I recognized also I have a family, and they're not going to eat Bright Line Eating like I am. They're not going to eat that way. They're going to still buy NMF. My kid's mom and I, we have 7 children together, and 4 of those children still live with me, and the other 3 are adults. They've left the nest, but yeah, my kids do not follow Bright Line Eating, and I need to be able to buy NMF and sometimes make NMF for them. And so I recognized I am going to need help. I'm going to need to create a culture of support among them. I'm going to need to get them on board. In other words, I want them supporting me and not tempting me away. And so I made a deal with each of my 7 children at the time. I said, when I lose an amount of weight equal to what each of you weighs, I will take you out on a daddy kid date, and I'll carry you around the house so that I can remember what it felt like to be that weight. And I did. I have lost an amount of weight that is greater than the weight of each of my 7 children, including the adult children, and their mom. And I put each of them on my back, and I have some pictures I can send to Cindy and share, but pictures of each of them on my back. And in fact, I got to a point where I had some pictures with 2 of them on my back because I had lost an amount of weight equal to what 2 of them weigh, and it was so fun. And we've gone out on daddy kid dates, and it motivated them. When I take the kids out for Halloween now, my now 10-year-old daughter, she was 8 at the time, and she'd stand between me. People would be like, "Oh, you're dressed up too. You know, would Dad like some candy?" She'd stand in between, and she'd put up her hand and say, "No, my dad doesn't want that," because she wanted that daddy kid date. Sorry, but anyhow, so Powerful Tribe. Hopefully that answers your question, Desha.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions for Rob? We're not hearing you.
Look at the chat.
Oh, is there, someone said it's in the
There's
chat?
a question in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not. If that person can vocalize it, we're not hearing. We're not hearing you well. Whoever that was that just spoke, we can't. You're.
I do see a question in the chat, and I'll be glad to answer it. Um, the question is, was your spouse supportive through this journey? If not, how did you handle that? And the truth is, my heart goes out to people that have unsupportive spouses. My wife and I are no longer together. We're divorced, and it's nothing to do with bright line eating or the change, honestly. But I'll just be vulnerable with you for a second and say, I started out our marriage as a nearly 400, well, I was then well over 200 pounds and became a nearly 400-pound guy. And I didn't like myself very much. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't really love other people well if you don't love yourself. And I think that over time, it becomes not easy to live with a guy who doesn't love himself. She and I both brought different problems to the marriage, but in the end, I changed massively, but not in quite enough time to win her heart, and that's a sadness, a regret. Despite that, I do want to share, she was and is incredibly supportive. She's a great mom to our kids and comes by and visits with them. And she works at a local Subway. She's a manager of a local Subway. And so when I eat out on the road, I will often go to Subway. And when she's there, she or some of my daughters that work there will actually weigh out my salads for me, which is absolutely, I was touched when she offered to do that. So yes, my former spouse was incredibly supportive. She's also like a 2 on the scale, so she didn't understand on the susceptibility scale, so didn't relate at all, but she was incredibly supportive. And again, if you can win the support of your spouse or children, that makes such a difference. And it takes sometimes some creativity. Sorry, there was, I think Judith and then Susan had a question.
Judith, yeah. Judith, unmute yourself so you can make your statement.
There we go. Hello. I came in late and I because I had trouble finding how to get in.
That's okay. We still love you.
Okay. So when I came in, you were talking about split personalities, and
Yes.
I heard that report that made the biggest change in my life. This was way back in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
I heard that report, and I've always wished I had a copy of it or knew what it was. Do you know, do you have the
Sure.
source? Do you have the source?
Yeah. Contact Cindy, and I can send you a link to it.
Okay.
It's a New York Times article from the 90s, or
Yeah.
might be late 80s almost.
Yeah.
I think like 1986 or something like that. And it's about a young man named Timmy. If you were to Google Timmy, DID, orange juice allergy, something like that, you'll find the article. But I'll try and find it and send that over to you. I do have it.
The biggest impression on me, I was at Optimum Health Institute in California, and I heard that from a psychologist that was speaking to us as a group. And I thought, wow, if you can do that, so your thinking is so important, how you talk to yourself. And they even showed, how you could rewrite the script and everything.
Yeah.
And it really was a crucial turning point in my life way back then. So thank you for knowing about it. You're the first person that I've ever heard refer to it. So it is crucial. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. And
Sorry, Judith, the other one, if you're interested, you can Google this too, is if you go to MedCircle, I think it's medcircle.com, but might be .org or .net or something. MedCircle is a pretty well-known, pretty reputable, they do medical interviews with different people. And MedCircle has a series of interviews with a young woman named Encina, E-N-C-I-N-A, who has DID. And she courageously shares a lot about that. And in one of the interviews, she talks about that gluten intolerance.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
And Rob, could you share with us again what DID stands for?
Sure. It's dissociative identity disorder.
Okay.
which is, it's better known by multiple personality disorder.
Right.
But there's a subtle difference in psychology between a personality and an identity. And so it's actually a disorder of the identity, not the personality. And so that's the correct term. If any of you are fans of the movie Split, that Hollywoodizes someone with DID to a really entertaining degree. But
Right. There's another question in the chat for you, Rob.
sure.
It says, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. It says, if you've worked with or coached or have experience with someone who has high functioning, I'm asking, I guess she's asking if you've ever had any experience with someone with high functioning autism or Asperger's, especially in shifting identity, habit building for health.
I have not. That fascinates me. I don't have experience with autism or Asperger's or anyone on the spectrum, but if I were to have a client that had that, the first thing I would do is basically reach out to a professional therapist or counselor, someone that works with autism, and just basically include them in that, so that we were doing a team type approach. That is, and so if you're, I'm assuming Lori who's asking may have someone in her life that has autism. I would say you probably want to get a coach and someone that is an autism expert, so that there's a little bit of a team approach there.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions for Rob?
Kay asked, when did you start exercising, or did you? The or did you is a little bit more telling, but I did wait to exercise until October. And I started very slowly, just a little bit. And I'll be really honest, I'm not super consistent with it yet. But the exercises I'm doing are basically walking. I'll go walking with kids, or I was walking at the gym before gyms closed for COVID. And now I just basically do a little bit of walking outside. I went on a walk this morning. It was beautiful. I do some push-ups and things like that. It's really just things that don't require a machine, things that are pretty simple. And I do that. I'll be honest, as I don't know if anyone's had a similar experience, but I lost so much that when I got down to close to my goal weight, I wasn't intentionally exercising, but I'd find myself, when I had to bring the barrels out to the end of the driveway, I'd run instead of walk, because it was just so fun. It was like, if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, how once he learned he could run, he ran everywhere. I just kind of started doing that. I'm like, I want to run everywhere. I'm at the mall and I'd like outwalk the kids, because it was just so fun to do that. So you kind of start to naturally do that a little bit, I think.
Tell us a little bit about your maintenance. How's maintenance going for you?
Sure. First of all, I have a maintenance coach. That's Shauna Murph, if anyone knows her.
Mm-hmm.
And she is fantabulous. And so I check in with her. I check in and let her know how I'm doing. And I did hit a slightly stressful time where I was a little bit fuzzy on my lines during maintenance back in January and a little early February. And started to feel the belt getting a little tight, started to feel the pants getting a tiny bit tight, and went, oh, bummer. And then I moved in early March, and I haven't unpacked all my boxes, and I still can't find my bathroom scale. And so I said, well, I just need to be really, really good. And so I really refocused on the bright lines, and the pants are not as tight. They've loosened back up again, and I'm able to. So I still can't find my scale. But I can tell by the clothes and how I feel that I'm where I need to be. That is due in large part to Shauna's check-ins and her just loving care. She's just a really neat maintenance coach.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyone else have another question or a thing that they'd like to discuss with Rob? I do, but I'm going to give somebody else another chance. Anybody else? I'd like to talk, Louise and I, who's on the call today, I actually had a discussion this week, because I am like you. I really believe that our thoughts create our feelings or our emotions, and which leads to our, actions and results. I've been following that model for a while as well, and feel you have specifically said that it was your conscious thoughts. But sometimes I think unconscious, we're not even aware of the thoughts sometimes that we're thinking that can also lead to that. So I was just curious about conscious versus unconscious thoughts.
Sure.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mentioned the conscious thoughts, and I focus there because those are the thoughts over which we have direct control. You remember when I did that exercise and I said, notice your right knee, notice your left elbow, and things like that? That's your conscious thought choosing where to direct that energy.
Right.
We don't have direct control over our subconscious thoughts, but we do have indirect control by controlling our conscious thoughts. If we use our conscious thoughts to hold an image in our mind, and it takes some willpower and some focus to learn to do that, but practice makes it happen. If we choose to hold a conscious image in our mind and attach a beautiful emotion to it of joy, gratitude, love, over time that makes an impression, an indelible impression on the subconscious mind. And you're exactly right. The subconscious mind, the subconscious thoughts then drive the emotions too. And to be really honest, if you can imagine a picture of an iceberg with a little tiny tip up top and a massive piece down underneath the water, the conscious thoughts are the tip up top. The massive piece below the water is the subconscious thought. So I'm really grateful that Cindy brought that up, because that is the more powerful piece.
It's been really fascinating to me, because there's times when I've recognized, that all of a sudden I'm in a grumpy mood, and I'm able to trace it back to the thought that created that, or whatever. But it, it happened unconsciously. And then, but I'm able to go back and retrace it. And I've been working with people as well too, with what was the thought you had before you grabbed that NMF or went through that drive-through like you were talking to. And so sometimes we may not recognize it right away, but when we go back and think about what was it I was, thinking before that happened, and sometimes that can be helpful as well, because oftentimes at least for me, I know I had that same issue with feeling like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and or that this is too hard, and those types of thoughts can lead you to that, the results that we don't want. But sometimes as we go back and trace it back, we can identify the thoughts, even though initially they may be unconscious. Sometimes we can go back and figure out what they were. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Figuring out what caused it is one of the ways that we can learn to change that, and we can question that thought that caused it, right? We go back and say, oh, I'm not really unworthy, or I'm not really having a bad day, or I'm not really whatever.
Exactly.
There's a second way, because sometimes I don't know if this is your experience, but sometimes I can't find which thought triggered it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a conglomeration of thoughts, or I may not have the mental energy to go back and do that searching. Here's a quick technique I'll share that made a huge difference. It made a difference for me for eating, but it made an even bigger difference for parenting. Because I have teenagers, and man, wow, anyone that has teenagers, my heart goes out to you. It's a work. So here's how this goes. First, you have to choose the more recent, the better. You have to choose a memory, an actual event that happened in your life with a powerful, positive emotion. It's got to be positive, and it's got to be really powerful. And it doesn't have to be spiritually significant. Like, more spiritually significant would have been the births of my children. Those are great moments. But I picked one that's more recent, and I'll share in a minute. It's kind of silly, but you want to pick this really powerful moment and then describe it in as few words as possible, but enough words that you get that feeling. I want you to describe it and see it in your head so powerfully that I want tingles to go up your spine when you say it and think about it. Okay? That's how powerful this needs to be. And then I'm going to teach you two phrases. All right? The first is a question. What do you know what this reminds me of? In those exact words, do you know what this reminds me of? The second is, this reminds me of, and then you say your powerful experience. Okay? And here's mine, and you're going to laugh because it's really silly. But my church has a talent show every year. And I did this at first when I was, this is back when I was close to 400 pounds, but I somehow got up enough courage to perform in this talent show. Excuse me. Wow. I just dumped on myself. I have a drinking problem. We're just getting all vulnerable now, huh? I can't drink. So I performed a rap parody. The rap was one that it was that all the kids knew was a Hamilton rap, and I wrote a parody that was different, and it was a lot of fun. And I performed this this rap parody, and at the very end, so I'm on the stage. At the very end, my daughter runs up and throws this pillow on the stage, and I was using a microphone, and I reached out and I did a mic drop, right? And it dropped down and hit the pillow, and then there was silence. And I looked out, and for this split second, 400-pound me is looking out and going, I must have looked like a complete fool. And there's a split second of silence, and I thought, these are my friends and family. Did they like it? Did they hate it? Do I look like an idiot? And then thunderous applause, thunderous applause. And for a guy that had low self-esteem, that was beautiful. That applause just fed the soul. Now, again, we're not running around in life looking for applause, right? They're much more important than spiritual things. But that fed me at that moment. And it was really neat. And I walked off the stage just with my spine tingling, just smiling and just being so excited. And so that became my moment. And so I would say, do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the mic drop at the end of my rap parody where I walked off the stage to thunderous applause. That's my phrase, okay? And here's how I'd use it. So when something bad, and first of all, I had to practice this dozens and dozens and dozens of times while I'm alone. So in my room, in the shower, whatever, in the bathroom, you just practice it over and over again. In the car, say it over and over again. Say the question and then the answer, question and answer, because you have to train yourself. Because you're going to need to do it when you don't feel like it. Remember, we talked about when you don't feel like it. When things are not feeling good, that's when you need to use it. So here's an example. My then 16-year-old daughter, she's now 18, would be yelling in my face. And of course, like every good parent, when a teenager's yelling at you, what happens? You're driven by an emotion. The emotion is fear. And for me, I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's mutiny on my ship. I'm the captain. There's mutiny. She's yelling in my face. Everyone else is going to see this. They're going to think that I'm not a good dad. They're going to think that I'm not in control. And they're going to mutiny too. And it's just going to be this really big mess. And so fear drives. And what does fear get you to do? It says, well, if you're a captain and there's mutiny, what do? You quash that mutiny. So I would do what every good parent does, right? I would yell louder. That's what I did, but it's not good parenting. But that's what I would do. And of course, that just escalated it. It now became this great feedback loop where my daughter's yelling at me, I'm yelling at her, and we both feel horrible. Now we're both triggering each other's fear, which triggers our primal brain and just makes it all a big mess. And I had destroyed by that time my relationship with her to a large degree, and we did not interact at all. She didn't talk to me except to yell. And all the parenting, all the interaction I did was through my former wife, through her mom. What I do, when I learned this technique, I began to use this. And so while she was yelling at me, I would ask, do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the mic drop at the end of my rap parody where I walked off the stage to thunderous applause. Now, it's a lie. It didn't really remind me of that. But what it did is I would feel that tingle up my spine. I'd feel like smiling. I wouldn't smile at her because she was yelling and I didn't want to irritate her. But I would feel a smile inside. I would feel that tingling up my spine. I would stand up straighter. My physiology changed because my emotions changed. My physiology changed. I would stand up. My body chemistry changed. Endorphins were released instead of cortisol and adrenaline. And instead of being angry, instead of crunching down and inhibiting my oxygen flow, I'd stand up and straighter and breathe deeper. And I was calm. And guys, guess what happens when you're calm? You're also creative. And you can choose a different result. You no longer have to follow the automatic programming. And I started to ask, well, it was fear that was driving me to yell. I wonder what's driving her to yell. It must be fear also. Where's her fear and pain coming from? For the first time in probably a decade, this father listened. And she was saying, you guys don't appreciate me. I help out around the house. I'm a good kid. And you don't appreciate me. Now, yelling at your dad isn't appreciated, but she had a point. She did do a lot. And she did help out. So I said calmly and quietly, you know, you've got a point. You do help out a lot. And I appreciate that. Thank you. And she kept yelling. And I just kept, thank you. You are good. And I reinforced that. And there was no change. And the second time she yelled, I did the same thing. And the third time, the same thing. Over time, she noticed that I wasn't faking it, that I was sincere, that I wasn't going to yell back at her, that I wasn't going to manipulate, I wasn't going to use it as ammo later on, that I was just going to forgive that in the moment and just tell her I appreciated her. And sure, when everything calmed down, I could say, hey, when we talk, would you mind using a quieter voice, because it helps me to respond better. But I didn't have to correct her in that moment. She became, our relationship improved dramatically. And when she was 17, she started to talk to me again in a non-yell. And she actually came up and asked something I never, ever thought I'd hear. She said, Dad, I'm trying to eat healthier. Would you teach me how? You can my point in sharing this, and now she's 18 and she lives on her own, and we're friends. And every time that she visits, we talk, and it's a fun, quiet conversation. We don't yell at each other anymore. We really don't. And there's a lot of respect, and it's just a neat relationship. I want to share that because I want to point out that you can take control of your emotions in the moment. Cindy was asking a great question. Sometimes it's helpful to go back and figure out what thought triggered that emotion, that fear in me. What thought caused this to break down? But if you've had a really bad day and you've had a whole bunch of those thoughts, trying to find them all can be like searching for a needle in a haystack. So sometimes you just need to take short-term control of the emotion. Find your mic drop moment, whatever it is. Ask that question. Do you know what this reminds me of? Because that grabs your amygdala. It grabs that part of your brain that is triggering things and quiets it down, tells it to shut up because you're doing its job for it. This reminds me of, you fill it in with that wonderful emotion. You change your physiology and your body chemistry, and you begin to become creative and to solve those problems. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to discuss in reference to our topics today, and questions or something that you've noticed as well along these lines? Changing your identity. It's a question.
Rob, I thought you mentioned that there were some, I don't know if you said books or resources that you would let us know.
Yes. So yeah, I'll be happy to kind of send a list of those to Cindy, and she can distribute those. But
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I think one of the things you shared that you mentioned was the idea that you were telling yourself, I am a healthy man. That was part of how you worked on changing your identity. And the way I see that is that you were choosing an empowering, powerful thought to begin believing that helped you to build positive emotions and lead to the results that you wanted.
Yes.
And so I think that is so helpful. I think, because we have all these unconscious and conscious thoughts that's often are so debilitating and, and can lead to such horrible results for all of us. I think it's really helpful for us to really focus on powerful thoughts like I am a healthy man, or, so many of the mantras out there that BLE has. I choose to be unstoppable was one that would help me at the beginning, because I would often make little mistakes and eat off plan at the first few months and stuff. And I was just curious if anybody else have any other powerful thoughts, or you, Rob, if you have any other powerful thoughts that you chose to adopt, like I am a powerful man, that have helped you. What are some of the powerful thoughts that you felt were good?
The first powerful thought that I chose to exercise, and I again give this to you in hopes that it serves you as it did me, is it's a quote from a spiritual leader named David A. Bednar. And David Bednar says, in all of creation, there were two things, two different categories of things created. There were things created to act and things created to be acted upon. And I listened to that quote and I realized I was created to act. I was not created to be a product of my circumstances or a creature of my circumstances, but I was created to create circumstances. And that was the most powerful beginning thought And that thought led me to choose to exercise that creative power by choosing other powerful thoughts, like I'm a healthy man, and other mantras that Susan provided. Really, I don't want to push my spiritual beliefs on anybody else, but I believe there is a creator with a capital C, and that we are created in that image. We are created to be creators with lowercase c's. We have creative power given to us. Every single one of us. It's by inheritance. You came with it. You don't have to. You don't have to earn it. It's not it's not something you have to pay money for. It came with you. It's part of you. You have a creative power, and we just don't know how to use it all the time. And that by choosing our thoughts and choosing our words, we are literally creating a world around us, and we create a new and different life. We create a world in our minds, and then it manifests through our actions into the results around us.
Excellent. I love that. I would share in that belief as well. I think we are endowed with that creative power to be able to choose powerful thoughts and have powerful beliefs. And the belief, like you shared earlier, that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, is one that I definitely have struggled with and still do struggle with and work on all the time. Yeah, it can be very debilitating, but yet we can create something different when I notice that I'm telling myself, oh, I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough in some way. I find that because of BLE, I'm more aware of these type of debilitating thoughts that I have, and how frequently these thoughts are lies. That I'm believing a lie.
We don't question them, but yeah, they're lies.
Right. Yeah, and it's just been really interesting. And as I've talked with other people as well, it's like whenever they'll say something like, "Oh, this BLE is just so hard," or whatever, or "I just can't do this," or whatever. Let's say we have no comment, but just really looking at that and wondering, whether that belief or that thought is true. Let's see what Lori says. 100% agree. We are created to be curious, connected, clear, and creative.
And
yeah.
And if there's time, another very quick anecdote. I used to, in volunteer work in my church, I worked with a group of young men, and I wanted to teach them about the power of the words that we use, about the power of the thoughts that we have about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I would, I'd do this demonstration. I did this many times, where I'd have one of the young men that was especially strong come up, that was especially, had a pretty good self-image, pretty good belief in his own physical ability. I said, "Come on up to the front of the room." And I said, "I'm going to have you repeat something 10 times. And then I'm going to have you put your arms out to your sides." You can't see me, but I'm putting my arms out like an airplane. And I would take 2 fingers, I'd put them on each of his wrists, and I said, "I'm going to try and push your arms down." So the first thing I'd have him say 10 times, "I'm strong, I'm worthy, and I can do it." And he'd say that 10 times. And I'd have everybody in the class, put their thumbs up to him, right? They're there supporting him. They say, "Yeah, you got this, you can do it." And he'd say that 10 times with emotion. Then I'd put my fingers out on his wrists. I say, "I'm going to push him down. Don't let me." And I'd try and push him down, and I'd get pretty red in the face. And most of the time I couldn't push him down. Especially if they were a little bit older, like 16, I couldn't get those arms down. There were some tough guys. And then I would say, "Okay, now let's change it. I want you to repeat this 10 times with emotion. You need to feel it." And everybody, I want you to repeat, "I'm weak, I'm unworthy, and I can't do it." And everybody in the class, put your thumbs down to him so he can see your thumbs down. And he would repeat those. And then I'd put my fingers on his wrists again. I'd say, "Okay, I'm going to push your arms down. Don't let me." And it almost always just slip right down to his side. His physical abilities changed with how he saw himself in a matter of minutes. Now, again, I had everybody in the class doing this. I had him saying it 10 times to kind of increase the effort for demonstration purposes. But how many times do we say things like that to ourselves out loud or silently throughout the day? How could I do that? How could I be so stupid? Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm so bad. Oh, and we just do that. We feed our subconscious those terrible, terrible thoughts. And then invariably, one of his friends would say, all right, Mr. Rains, that's great. But I think you just tuckered him out the first time. You got him so tired that the second time it was really easy to push his arms down. I'd say, okay, let's test that theory. Let's have him say the positive one now. We're going to counteract the negative. So we're going to say it 20 times. I'm strong, I'm worthy, and I can do it. And everyone does the thumbs up again. And invariably, that third time, I couldn't push him down. And it would show these guys how powerful our thoughts and words are in the moment. And when you add that effect, that cumulative effect over days and weeks and years of how we talk to ourselves, guys, that makes such a difference. If you start talking to yourself different today, your life is going to be different a year from now, massively different. So again, you create with your thoughts and words, but it literally, you created a very different physiology in the end. So again, whether your goal is to keep me from pushing your arms down, or whether your goal is to follow 4 bright lines, your ability to do that is really very much directly under your control.
Yes, I agree with that as well. Excellent. Well, Rob, I am so grateful that you're a part of this powerful tribe with us. And
my pleasure.
And Lori, Faith has said, what if we begin choosing to believe that our actions are actually easy? You know, and that's true. It really is a great quote. Let's see.
That's a great thought. I love that, Lori. Here's what I've discovered. So I never want to discourage that. I think it's a neat thought. I found that if I tried to use a mantra that wasn't accurate, it was more difficult. So for example, I could look in the mirror as a 375-pound man and say, I'm a 175-pound man. But when I look in the mirror, I'm not. And so that my conscious mind didn't really let that one in. I wasn't able to absorb that. And so I could say, these actions are easy. And if they're easy that day, if they feel easy, that works. If there's a day where they don't feel easy, your mind's not as likely to accept that. What I would say instead, which is just as effective, is whatever is inside me is stronger than what's on the outside. However hard it is on the outside, I'm bigger, I'm tougher, I'm stronger inside. Mm-hmm. When you do that, and that is true, that is absolutely true. When you do that, they will become easy. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, that is. Thank you. Yes, I would definitely agree. We do need to believe those thoughts. They do need to be something that we can really stand behind.
Cindy, Louise has her hand up. Sorry.
Everyone is. Louise, go ahead, sweetie.
I want to thank you so much, Rob. This has been incredible. And a lot of the things you talked about are things that I knew and understood, but you just don't think about it enough. And that's why this tribe is just such a fantastic vehicle to just keep us with those thoughts. One thing, I am about to embark on a very difficult family situation with an elderly aunt who's 94, whose son is estranged from her. She's having difficulty living on her own. And I am going to spend a week with her and try to, just help the situation in any way I can. And that exercise that you just talked about, choosing a memory with a powerful, positive emotion, because sometimes it's very difficult for me to remain calm in a very heightened emotional situation. So I am definitely going to use that. But now I have to come up with that memory that creates that powerful, positive emotion for me.
Yep.
I think that might take a little time, but I will use that, and I'm hoping that helps me stay calm, centered, so that I can really be of service in this particular situation. So I thank you so much for this.
Glad to help. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. Does anyone else have any closing comments or thoughts, or want to share anything, any powerful thoughts or things that you have used, or anything before we wrap things up? I don't know. There's another comment from Lori about her autistic friend, Rob.
Yes, I love the fact that she's phrasing that as a question. What if it's actually easy? That asking a question that is designed to have a powerful answer or a positive answer is super. Your mind is your mind is created to solve problems and to solve puzzles. This goes along with powerful language a little bit. When you ask most of the questions we ask ourselves are questions that automatically have a negative answer. They assume a negative, like, why did I do that? Why can't I do this? Why am I broke? Why am I fat? Whatever. When we ask those questions, our brain will find answers. And they're not always true answers, but it'll find answers. Like you are because, because you're weak, or you are because you lack willpower, or you are because you didn't get a good education, or whatever. It'll find reasons and fill them in. But if you ask a question that assumes a positive, like, what if it's actually easy? Then your brain will look for proof that it is easy, and we'll find it. So I really love the way that that's phrased, and I think that would be extremely helpful to this person that you're working with, Lori.
Yes. She says, I find that whenever we look for, whatever we look for, we'll find the evidence of. And that is so true. That is so true. We look for things to be critical of, we can definitely find that. If we look to things to love, we can find that as well. That's great. And I see Sue is thanking you. Everyone is thanking you, Rob, for being so heartfelt and sharing with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
In a deep way. We do appreciate it. I'm so grateful that I had the chance to get to know you over this last couple of years and to hear some of your story, and just to be a witness of your amazing transformation. And so thank you again. And I will post on Phoenix Brightest the recording, and I will post the books and things that he is sharing on that same post again in a couple of days. Okay. So, well, I know you're busy. He has 4 children and he's raising at home on his own, and they're all been very good and quiet in the background. Before we got on, I hear him warning, telling the kids, be quiet. I'm on a Zoom call. So they did it. So thank you, children, for us as well, for giving us and sharing, your Saturday with us. This was a real sweet sacrifice that you made to give us this time together. And again, everyone is just please, before you go, look at all those chats of all the thank yous for what you've shared with us today. We so do appreciate you, and again, are so grateful to be part of this powerful tribe. You are part of what makes this tribe so powerful. We have a beautiful BLE loving community, and it's just, part of the real blessing of this whole issue that we've all struggled with for years with our weight, is that we've been able to unite together with such beautiful people and learn together and grow together and heal together. And that has been such a beautiful silver lining in the struggle that we've all experienced for the last 40, for me, 40 years of struggling with weight. This, it was worth it to be able to be now part of this beautiful community with so many people that are just so amazing. So thank you again. And I will post your website as well on that post that I share. So, and then they just said, thank you, Rob, you are worthy. Yes, you are.
Thank you, guys. You are all worthy.
Yes,
you are
we are all
worthy.
Thank you. If everybody wants to unmute and say a goodbye and a thank you, that would be great. I am going to, I think you have the controls, Rob. So if you want to unmute everybody.
Sure. I'm going to stop the recording.